is you. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the private sector organization of Jamaica.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Let's explore wild wonders at the San Diego Zoo.
Drop by on Sundays at 11:30 a.m. and Mondays at 2 p.m. to dive into the fascinating world of exotic animals on the People's Station.
I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it set, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file the declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the private sector organization of Jamaica.
Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you, obey the road code, pay your ticket on time, and only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
I have made a vow to serve the Lord, and now
overshadows me. He leads me where the waters overflow for me. He makes his spirit place a mark on me, so they shall know I'm a daughter of the Almighty. I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Recreate me and make me as one of thine own. Jamaica, gospel style.
Me, I go show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today.
Na. We want a peace for Jamaica. Yeah. We have to be our brother's keeper. Yeah. Jamaica live good, yeah. I make we enjoy life. While we feel safe at night. Jamaica live good. I better you and I. No say we future bright. Jamaica live good. Come together as one. I make the violence the one.
Every year, the Jamaican Parliament approves billions of our taxes to be spent on goods and services provided by the private sector. Everything from pens to power plants, cleaning services to construction are obtained through a process called public procurement. But who funds this process? Citizens do. And we want our taxes to be spent wisely. When we talk about public procurement, there's a critical concept called value for money. We hear it in the Parliament all the time, but what does it really mean? Some think value for money means choosing the cheapest option, but it's more than that. For example, a community needs a new bridge, and the government receives bids from 3 companies. Company A offers to build it for $10 million in 18 months with a 50-year lifespan. Company B wants $12 million to finish in 12 months with a 75-year lifespan. Company C asks for $8 million, needs 24 months with a 25-year lifespan. Company B actually offers the best value for money. To determine that, we look for 4 crucial factors: economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. Let's explore what each means. For economy, we must look beyond the upfront price and consider the full lifetime costs to maintain the bridge. Cheaper options could lead to frequent and expensive repairs. We get efficiency if the bridge is built within budget and on time, with no waste of materials. To achieve this, we need the best team, and clear criteria helps the government to pick the best proposal. Effectiveness looks at whether the government achieves its goal. This could require a community needs assessment to ensure the bridge will reduce transport costs and travel time, withstand the annual flooding with little disturbance to plant and animal life. Finally, equity. This is about fairness, satisfying the different needs of the community. The bridge design considers not just cars and pedestrians, but
person, the solo person here in the chamber, but we have online Senator Donna Scott Motley, Senator Keisha Anderson, Member Marlene Malahoo Fort, Member Dennis Daly, and Senator Rosemary Bennett Cooper. So we do have a quorum, and we can get started. So the meeting is now called to order, and I ask at this time a volunteer to say prayer. Mrs. Robinson, thank you.
Father, we thank you for another day. We give you the highest praise because you are so worthy. We invite your presence in our deliberation, discussion, on the statutory review of the Domestic Violence Act, and we know that you're already here and in the midst and ready to bless. We ask that the discussion be fruitful and that whatever we do today, as we discuss amendments to the Domestic Violence Act, that we will have a fruitful and impactful discussion so that it will redound to the benefit of all parties concerned. Bless our chair and the members. In your name we say thanks. Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Are there any apologies for absence? Okay, apologies from Senator Cavan Gale and Senator Abka Fitzhenley. As well as Minister Johnson-Smith, Kamina Johnson-Smith. So the clerk will note those apologies. So I want to just go through my remarks, my opening remarks at this time, and to welcome everyone and thank you for making yourselves available for this, this meeting of the Joint Select Committee that's reviewing the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. When we had our first sitting on Thursday, February 5, 2026, I said something that I now want to repeat because I meant it then and I mean it even more at this time, that this review cannot be treated as routine parliamentary business. Somewhere in Jamaica right now, while we are having this meeting, there is a woman deciding whether it is safe to go home. And I want to thank each of you for staying engaged since our first meeting. I know the schedules in this room are not light, and yet you have found the time to come back and continue this work. And that tells me something about where your priorities are, and I'm grateful for it. Particularly grateful to the members of the committee who are here today, those who could not be here in person, the fact that they've made themselves available to join online. And of course, I want to thank Member Brownberg for making the effort to be here in person. Let me remind us briefly of where we stand. The amendments which were approved in December 2023 gave us real teeth. It gave us a good opportunity to have addressed some urgent matters that needed to have been addressed. This includes the exponential increase regarding the penalty for breaching a protection order from $10,000 to $1 million with up to a year's imprisonment. We widen the categories of persons who can apply for protection order on behalf of a victim or survivor of domestic violence. We have ramped up the legal authority invested in the children's advocate to intervene in cases where a child is at risk. We have strengthened the court's jurisdiction on the treatment of sexual harassment and on the destruction or misuse of property. Those are not minor achievements. In fact, everyone in this room knows that a law is only as strong as its enforcement, and that it is really the heart of what this committee has been asked to examine. So today I want us to get into the substance. Member Malahoo Ford, I know you and the technical team will be interrogating cross-cutting legislation and the consequential amendments once the working groups have been established. I also want us to work through the matrix of recommendations from the 2018 committee to arrive at consensus regarding the recommendations required to address the gaps. As part of this review, I believe we should also carefully consider whether there is scope to further strengthen the protective measures available under the Act. In particular, we should examine whether the existing prohibitions contained in protection orders are sufficiently comprehensive or whether they ought to be expanded to provide the judiciary with greater flexibility to craft orders that are appropriately tailored to the unique circumstances of each case. Our objective must be to ensure that the legislation equips the courts with the necessary tools to provide meaningful and effective protection to the victims and survivors of domestic violence. We also intend to invite comments and recommendations from the judiciary and the Jamaica Constabulary Force as key stakeholders in this review process. Of course, given their practical experience in interpreting, administering, and enforcing the provisions of the Domestic Violence Act, they are uniquely positioned to provide valuable insights into the operation of the legislation, particularly since the 2023 amendments came into effect. Their perspectives on the practical impact of the amendments, the challenges encountered in implementation, and any areas where further legislative reform may be warranted will greatly assist this committee in ensuring that the Act remains effective, remains responsive, and fit for purpose. Since our last meeting, letters were dispatched to selected organizations and individuals who made submissions to the previous committee to find out from them whether they still stand behind what they told us or whether their thinking has moved on. I extend heartiest commendation to the committee coordinator and the technical team for sharing a matrix of new or updated submissions received in the current session of Parliament from persons and entities that sent papers to the previous committee. And we have quite a large number of comments, and the matrix is quite detailed, and we will have an opportunity to go through the matrix to make decisions. These persons were invited to confirm the continuing validity of their original submissions, or to modify or completely replace them in keeping with the committee's instructions issued at the first sitting. We have also received new unsolicited submissions, which are also included in the matrix. So the matrix is quite up to date and will be an excellent document that will give us a very, very good start. The findings from the Women's Health Survey 2016 indicates that 1 in 4 Jamaican women has experienced intimate partner violence in her life. So let us use our time this afternoon, let us use our time well. Or this morning. Let us be thorough. Let us be honest with each other about what is working and what is not. And let us keep moving with the urgency which is required. As we continue this very important journey to review this very important legislation, we intend to send a clear signal that this committee is fully aligned with the zero tolerance approach of the government of Jamaica regarding all forms of violations of the human rights of our citizens. This becomes even more urgent when we are faced with cases of abuse of power, particularly towards our women and our girls, and our boys and our men, and the women and our girls particularly, who are disproportionately affected by all forms of violence, by victimization, by discrimination, abuse, and exploitation. So as I complete my opening remarks, I would say let us get to work. And thank you so much. At this time, I would ask, I do not know if members had a chance to read the minutes of the meeting that was held on January 5. And if someone would just confirm the minutes of that meeting. Oh, it's the meeting of February 5. And if you would confirm, members, you had a chance to look at those minutes?
I have one correction, Madam Chair, to the really more typo and grammar than anything else, and that is on page 2 of the minutes, paragraph 5.0, the second paragraph under numbered paragraph 5. We don't usually refer to it as 1 year's imprisonment. Is $1 million from the amendments increase the penalty for breaching a protection order from $100,000 to $1 million or 1 year imprisonment. Not 1 year's imprisonment. I mean, in one grammatical sense, it may be.
Yes, I see that.
It is 1 year imprisonment.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Or imprisonment up to 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Noted. Perhaps the better way to write it would be with imprisonment up to 1 year.
Okay, clerk will make that change. Thank you, member. I'll move forward. Member Brownberg, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a question if there are no, other issues from the members. Physically, we have one on legal size and one on letter size. I just want to make sure that they are the same, so if we are confirming minutes, we know which one we are confirming and that it's the very same document. Okay. And so if there's nothing else, I'd move for the confirmation of the minutes.
I must indicate that there's been some difficulties here in relation to getting things printed and so on. All right?
That's fine. So as I said, if there's no other issue, I'd like to confirm the minutes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Seconded.
Sorry. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Morning, Chair and dear members and colleagues. Just a note though, since the print is different and we have different page numbers, I suggest that when you're doing the corrections, instead of noting the page, you perhaps do it by paragraph, because what Member Malahoo Fort said was on page 2 is on page 1 for me, because it's on legal size for me. So I think it may be better to just refer to a paragraph number rather than a page number. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we will now go to matters arising. Well, the minutes confirmed? Okay, so moved by Member Brownberg and confirmed by Member Malahoo Fort. Thank you. All right, so we'll now go to matters arising from the minutes.
Madam Chair, at the last meeting, I'd raised a
Please go
technical matter.
ahead.
At the last meeting, I'd raised a technical matter which was premised on the principle that one parliament does not bind the other. The reference, the work that was sent to the committee was the review of the act. Perhaps we need to check for the record, how do we incorporate what must be incorporated as all of the work that was done in the previous parliament. Usually it would come in the resolution on the work that is placed before the committee. It's not a big point, it's a technical point, but it's an important point. I wouldn't want us to delay, just to take note that when we are bringing forward the work from one parliament to another, then it should be expressly provided for.
Okay, thank you for that comment. So maybe at the next sitting of the House, we will move a motion. Member? Member Mallow Ford?
Sorry, yes, Madam Chair,
Yes.
that would take care of it. Just
yes. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, now, I don't know if you have had a chance, Member Mallow Ford, to have looked at all into the cross-cutting legislations that we'd ask you to pull together a team to address.
Well, the team has not been pulled together. May I just look back? But I have begun to look at some of the other pieces of legislation, including new ones that may be helpful for the work of the committee.
All right, so it would be useful if you could pull the team together as soon as you can and make recommendations to the committee here, as well as if you could do a preliminary list of the legislations that you see as cross-cutting.
Very well. We'll do, Madam Chair, with the assistance of the technical team. What is usually beneficial is to look at other areas of the law that either need strengthening or would impact any matter that is before the court when the provisions of the Act are being considered. So generally, we can deal with matters of jurisdiction at a broad level, who applies, whether there are other pieces of legislation that have remedies that do not exist in this law. So, for example, child diversion is a big part of the work that the Ministry of Justice is now doing. And I know the child diversion law is being reviewed by a joint select committee. And to the extent that we have moved the jurisdiction away from a retributive justice to one of restorative justice, we may also want to look at newer approach being taken, even as we must send a very clear signal about the kind of behavior that we do not wish to see. We also want to put before our people the kind of behavior that we would want for the preservation of the family unit and members. So that's where my thoughts are at this time in respect of consequential amendments and where we can also look.
I will, and thank you for those comments. But you know, it's going to be critical and urgent for us to look at those pieces of legislation So for the team to be pulled together as quickly as possible.
May I, through you then, Madam Chair, just ask for any volunteers from among the members? That's always a good place to start, to invite volunteers for this aspect of work. And I will then follow up by asking members.
Well,
and we would
there is a technical team.
Yes.
That you could draw on their expertise as a start.
Yes.
And then, we invite members of the committee who would want to also be a part of the team, particularly those who are attorneys.
Right. Very, very well, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And just to say, if your secretariat in the ministry already has a list of the legislation and the work that they have been doing, that cross-cut with this area, then I should be grateful for that information.
Well,
from a practical standpoint.
Yes. Counsel who is based in our ministry is available to work closely with you in pulling it together. And Mrs. Robinson, who heads the Bureau of Gender Affairs, she's also available. So you certainly could start there, and with you, they will assist in pulling the list together, as well as helping you to put the subcommittee together as well.
Duly noted, Madam Clerk. Ms. Blackwood, take note. Very well.
Right. So, Mrs. Robinson, you may want to make a comment here, or our attorney. About this. All right.
Thank you, Minister. In this case, Chair, we're thinking of adding the Cybercrimes Act because there are points of entry for this legislation. I've been in other spaces and I've been told that there are, especially the piece that talks about the firearm and having to do with the JCF, we could look at the Cybercrimes Act and then the Sexual Offences Act. Chair, those are the two that I'm thinking of. Thank you.
All right, so I'd ask you to be in touch with Member Malhou Ford and to assist her in getting the team.
We can also add the Offences Against the Persons Act. All of the principal acts that deal with or punishes violence or create offences dealing with violence can be looked at too.
Yes.
We will follow. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I would also wish to have the committee's guidance and support in a decision was taken that we would go through going through the matrix before we invite persons to come and make presentations. But in doing a review with the team in the ministry, we feel that we should try to do as much as we can simultaneously. And in the first instance, we would want to invite the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the judiciary to make presentations to us at the earliest possible time to inform us as to the impact of the amendments that were done in 2023. So that also could be added to the matrix that we will be reviewing. So I would ask committee for their permission to move a little away from the decision we had made of going through the matrix before we invite presentations, and that we could have presentations simultaneously, starting with the JCF and the judiciary. So I invite comments and your position on this. Brownberg, Member Brownberg.
Thank you very much, Madam Sure. I agree with including certainly institutions like JCF and the judiciary, and going, as we review the submissions that were there, that we also look to individuals like these. I think it is important also because one of the things that you know I always talk about in terms of our laws is that we really don't include the post-implementation monitoring. And so this allows us actually to get an insight from those who are in the trenches working with these cases. So I like that. As we look, though, for the work that we're doing, I wanted to just say, if you allow me, that there are 3 areas that that are in my head that I want to make sure that we pay attention to. And it's really to make sure around the issue of inclusion, inclusive language, and so on. A number of the other agencies have raised that. I'm also concerned about a public education mandate that would be in the law itself that is required. And of course, in terms of accountability, and for me, importantly, is also that post-implementation monitoring, what that looks like and what is expected. Not that we do it through our agencies, but that it is actually included in the legislation that we pass as a mandate as well.
Thank you. I see Member Daly's hand up, and I would ask members online if you could please put your cameras on, because we are being carried live on PBCJ. And when you don't put your camera on, we end up with a dark blank screen. And that certainly visually is not good. So if you could please put your cameras on. And I recognize Member Daly.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Morning to the committee. And I'm happy that in spite of the festive season, we still find time to ensure that gender is placed squarely on the table for consideration, especially in a time where violence is so prevalent among women and girls. I would want, though, Chairman, for you to be a little bit more precise in terms of the committee that Malou Fort is to constitute. We need a timeline. We keep talking about these things, and then we come back, we hear that because of certain things we are not able to implement. And the time is going. While the clock is ticking, we are losing lives and we are putting other persons at risk. So I would recommend that coming out of this meeting, that we set some timelines in order that we can be able to go forward. And the other thing I want you to look at is the curriculum in terms of when we are adding in schools, because we tend to believe that the schools are not involved in serious domestic violence, but there are serious problems happening in the schools now, and we need to include the schools. It might be a little sensitive, but we will have to know how to include it in what area of the curriculum in order that we'll be able to not just penalize, but to educate and to enforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Daly. Your comments are noted. I would like to ask Mrs. Robinson to speak to some timelines which we had discussed. Yeah, because the machinery for or the secretariat resides in the Bureau of Gender Affairs. And so, Mrs. Robinson, you may want to, mention the timelines that we're looking at.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So we had a pre-discussion preparatory meeting ahead of this sitting, And I think Minister had looked at trying to get stuff accelerated so that we could have this review completed very quickly. So we're looking at the months of September and October. I think August is out, as you know, based on the number of things we're doing, as well as the fact that it's summer. So Minister was looking at September, October, and early December, first week in December. In terms of the working group, she was thinking of having persons agree to becoming a member of the team and starting to do the work, because that's where most of the work will be done. Between meetings is what we were looking at. So I think, Minister, you thought of the 3 months based on what we discussed between now and early December.
We are, I'm being very ambitious, but I don't think it's beyond us to, we are setting timelines and hope we can meet those timelines, but I would like to see legislation, if at all possible, new legislation or an amended legislation in place by the end of the fiscal year. It's very ambitious, but I think we should work towards that, which means that we will have to, we're off in August, we take a break in August, but that we meet, come September, we meet every month. If we can meet twice a month, we do so. Where it's not possible for us to meet in person, we meet virtually. And that subcommittees function outside of our joint select committee meetings, and that we plan a retreat for November or early December. And coming out of that retreat, we should have our recommendations finalized, which we could take to Parliament, take our report to Parliament, after which the technical team can do their work. No, this is a very ambitious plan, but it is not beyond us.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, I lost connection for a while. I don't know if I was the only person. But in respect of Member Daly's concern, just to say that the 2018 report had already identified critical pieces of legislation that needed to be looked at. And you may recall Mrs. Seeley Brown, the drafter, made the suggestion that there would be a useful starting point. So the Sexual Offences Act, the Child Care and Protection Act, the Offences Against the Persons Act. So already we have set out in the 2018 report of the previous Joint Select Committee sections of those laws that we need to look at. So I don't know if that may assist Member Daly. So once the subcommittee is constituted, our starting point, along with the other material that may come through the recommendations of the technical team, would be what is contained in the 2018 report and those critical pieces of legislation. Adequacy of the penalty, adequacy of the offences, how the difficulty that has been experienced in the court, and what recommendations for changes need to be made. So we're not starting from scratch. There is already quite a bit of work done that just need to be revisited.
Thank you, Member Ford. What we can do is pull out those recommendations from the report and have it as a document which we will also review during the review process of the matrix that are recommendations from the various presentations. So we will have two documents with which we can work. So that would be an excellent start, good start. Thank you, Member Ford. Member Daly, is your hand still up, or?
Yes, just quickly,
Please go ahead.
Chairman. I'm very happy for that, but just to state that between 2018 And now you must realize that the entire thing has shifted. So we really need to get, as you said, Chairman, that document in order that we can revisit and to see exactly where we are and what is needed. Because take, for instance, like cybercrime has now become very prevalent. So we will have to look at some of those documents to see whether or not it had included or that we need to include. And I just finally want to say that when I speak about women and girls, I'd really wanted to speak to gender-based violence as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, what we will do, we will look at, Mr. Johnson Smith is here, thank you. We will look at the work that has been done over time and see, and review all of those to see how we can incorporate recommendations that we consider are relevant and important. So we are not going to ignore, discard anything. We're going to review the current ones and those previously, and then come up with the recommendations. Thank you, Member Daly. You had mentioned, or it's Member Brownberg, mentioned inclusion and public education, which are critical areas. And Mrs. Robinson, you may want to speak to inclusion as well as public education based on the initiatives coming out of the Bureau. Oh, Mrs. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to let members know, Chair, remember there's already a matrix that was done, so I can share it, because I have a copy from when we had those meetings in 2017? And that would have set out all of the concerns, even it dealt with sexual offenses, concerns that were raised in relation to the domestic violence legislation. So I can share it if you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you, Minister. Well, Chair. In terms of the support that is provided to groups that are extremely vulnerable based on the need for inclusion, we've looked at two major programs or initiatives that include especially vulnerable women, children, the disabled, the elderly, and persons who are disproportionately affected by violence, abuse, discrimination, victimization, and the like. So the COPE initiative is just what it says. It allows groups to cope, and it is the acronym for Community Outreach through Partnership for Empowerment. We do have, among the 19 partners, persons who are from the disabled community, persons who are blind, deaf, and women who are also working as a part of the MSME sector. We also have another initiative which we call WEST, and that's because there is a focus on women in entrepreneurship. And among that group, there are quite a few women who are blind, some are deaf, but they are holding their own in terms of having their own businesses. Some are being operated from home, and some are being operated from other spaces in partnership with a number of groups and stakeholders.
Thank you, Mrs. Robb. Did you mention anything about public education?
In terms of public education, we do have a very robust public education campaign. It's the NEFA campaign. NEFA is short for No Excuse for Abuse. We had started that so many years ago under the Spotlight Initiative. It was an outcome, one of those outcomes from the Spotlight Initiative, and that allows us to be able to go across Jamaica to different parishes and communities as well as urban town centers to talk about matters relating to gender-based violence, and that is being done through the implementation of our very ambitious NSAP, that's shortened form for National Strategic Action Plan. to eliminate gender-based violence in Jamaica. It's a 10-year plan, 2017 to 2027, and it has 5 strategic priority areas. And so for each of those strategic priority areas, we do have modules that we use to share with persons the importance of knowing what is gender-based violence as a very comprehensive definition, knowing how to get protection if you are so aggrieved, or if you know somebody who is aggrieved, because we can also have support being done on behalf of somebody who is aggrieved, and how it is that the law supports persons. We give them updates on new and existing legislation and what we're doing, in fact, to make sure that we strengthen the prosecutorial arm of the justice system, and just to let persons be aware that the government of Jamaica is interested in their welfare and is interested in making sure that where the legislation is concerned, we are working towards improving that and making sure that there is a legislation that is matching what is required. And that's the reason we're strengthening this. And there's also the GAP, and that one is a short form for Gender Ambassadors in School. It's a GAP program which looks at the nexus between gender and education to ensure that students in schools are aware of how they can be protected from abuses, victimization, how they can speak out against whatever it is that they see as wrongful, and how it is that they can, as young persons, be advocates for the cause and how to protect themselves from a range of. There is collaboration, of course, with the JCF through what we have as a continuum of care for survivors of gender-based violence, which was signed in 2022, and that allows us to have all the key stakeholders who would be a part of a survivor space, whether it is that the person needs to be whisked off to one of our safe spaces, one of our shelters that we have, or it could be that the person needs psychosocial support and counseling through our GBV helpline unit, or the person is a male and can be supported through a male empowerment unit. And so we do have as comprehensive as possible across legal officers. In terms of our legal space, that is something that we are extremely proud of, because persons need to know what is legal and what is in there for them and how they can access it. So that legal literacy is also provided to persons when we do our sensitization. We also take legal officers with us when we do our sensitization sessions to explain to persons in very simple language how it is that they can have access to the law, how it works, and how it benefits each of them. Thank you.
Mrs. Robinson, yes, you may want to just mention how you've used the dispute resolution mechanism to treat with perpetrators or cases, and in turn use perpetrators to help with the public education message, to use them as agents of change.
Right. So in terms of the perpetrators, I did mention the NSAP GBV, which is our National Strategic Action Plan, and it looks at different groups of persons that we have to support. First one is a survivor who would have become a survivor because that person was a victim and moved on. But there's another group that sometimes is overlooked, and that's the perpetrators. And so we have seen the relevance of making sure that we have initiatives and programs and so on that treat with perpetrators. The one we are proud of is the RPP. That is an acronym for Refocus Perpetrator Program, and that looks at how is it that somebody who has been a perpetrator of violence is able to come to grips with what has happened and how it is that this person can recognize that what has been done is wrong and needs to stop. We have partnered with the JAMHAN, which is the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, and they have allowed us to do something very unique, which we found extremely important. It's a biopsychosocial assessment, which allowed each of those perpetrators to come very face-to-face with how it is that they have become a perpetrator, whether it is that they have been traumatized when they were a child or a teenager, whether they were a victim of abuse and they witnessed it or experienced it, or secondary experience or secondary trauma, or just anger issues, not able to solve issues and not able to resolve disputes and so on. Some years ago, we had a project that we worked with the Jamaica, this is a Dispute Resolution Foundation. It's called the Way Out Project. And that project was very important because what it did was it allowed persons to see how there were so many ways that you can resolve disputes without becoming violent. And so under the theory of change, we have folded in a number of initiatives, including the RPP, that's a Refocus Perpetrator Program, to allow persons who have gone on that path of becoming a perpetrator to make a 360-degree turn when they recognize that it might have been that something had happened in their past to affect them and that we can assist them. So the restorative justice arm is very important to that process because we work through the Justice and Peace Centers through the Ministry of Justice and now Constitutional Affairs added to ensure that we can provide solutions to persons and options that are non-violent and peaceful in their communities.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Any further comments? I see a hand up. Member Daly, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. I do not want to be taking the floor too often, but, you know, it is very, very important that we have this discussion because while Mrs. Roberts was speaking, I recognize even more the importance of having public education campaign. It is going to play a very crucial and important role because we have to ensure that when people come before us, they are aware of what they are committing and what they are going to be charged for or be counseled for, or else we will be just doing this repeatedly because the perpetrators don't even understand that they have done something wrong. Public education is going to be a key factor in going forward. And Minister, Madam Chair, I would implore you to seek funding if we really want to do something that is going to eliminate this epidemic, I would call it. We need to get funding so that we can educate and empower. I'm going to just share one quick story with you. When I had a little meeting in my constituency, and the things that the men thought was okay, and when I start relating to them and explaining what will happen to them, they were totally lost because they must say that's nothing, that sounds so public education, Madam Chairman, is going to play a critical role because laws that we put in place and people are not aware, they are going to continue to commit it, the crime, and we will have to find space in the prison system to put them, find counselors to continue counseling them, mediation for them to go to, when we could empower them by educating them, and we would not have to continue having this kind of committee going in the next 2030, which would be the time that we say we are going to eliminate violence against gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Daly. You are right. Public education is critical, and we recognize our public education program could even be more robust. And so we are in discussion with some of our partners to receive funding in order to expand and intensify our public education program. So we are on the same page. Member Brownberg, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I really want to say how pleased I am of the work that is being done by the Bureau of Gender Affairs. And I'm well aware of some of the public education programs that you have outlined, and I have seen them at work and the impact. I want to go back because I want to join, and I think we are all on the same page, so we're not talking at odds here. For the public education, all of what is being done is excellent. I'm thinking, though, that we need to lift it from just being policy and programs being carried out by the Gender Affairs Bureau, for example, to an actual legal mandate for public education. You know, maybe something even to say, for example, that as we look at changes to the law, that the Bureau is given the resources and the mandate to report, for example, to Parliament, you know, every 2 years in terms of what the public education program is. But just something to lift that, so there is in fact a public mandate for public education, because I think that that is so important. And then I know we monitor and I know we do data, and it's the same thing as well for the post-implementation monitoring, that you know, a report comes to Parliament where we discuss the data that has been collected, the disaggregated data, so that we all have a better understanding. I am pleased to hear what Member Daly has said, because I do know that so many of us in the Parliament, as members of Parliament, have these kinds of conversation every day. And so it is important that we also become a part and parcel of that channel through which, another one of the channels, through which public education can be given. And I think that if we were to have these kinds of reports to Parliament and a discussion about what's happening, where it's happening, what, you know, what are the important things to look for, and so on, that we could be part of helping as well. And I say that, but it's not limited to that. I'm just using that as an example.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Member Brownberg. So at this time, I think we have looked at matters arising and even have gone beyond that. And we may now want to look at the review of the matrices of submission. I want to invite our legal counsel, Unique Hall, to sort of walk us through the matrix. I invite members online, you do have access to the matrix? Members online?
No, I am not.
I recall that they were sent sent along with the minutes and the gender minister. So yes, I've looked at some of them.
All right. For those who don't, I'll just ask you to listen carefully as our legal counsel, Unique Hall. She will take us through the matrix, and feel free to ask questions, and please feel free to make your input. I'm also inviting the technical team and our Solicitor General to make your input. We're considering these meetings that we're doing serious work, and we're trying to expedite as much as possible the work of this committee. So we're going to look at the matrix that relates to Domestic Violence Act of 2020, the matrix that says DVA Matrix 2026. And Ms. Hall, you could just explain that what this matrix, what it entails, what are the details, how this compilation has been put together, and then you walk us through it. All right, thank you.
If I may ask, Minister, that is the DVA Matrix 2026 new papers updates? Is that the one to which
it says matrix of submission for the... Yes, the DVA Matrix 2026.
All new papers and updates?
Right. Yes, yes.
Thank
you.
It's supposed to say created May. Yes, so this is the wrong one. No, it not say created May 2026. Yes, it's supposed to say created.
All right, let me explain. The file name is DVA Matrix 2026. And it's the same document that the hard copy is being distributed or has been distributed in the meeting.
So it might be useful to just say that the heading on the one that's distributed is Matrix of Submissions for the Joint Select Committee, the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023. And that's what is here. So, when the 2026, I was like, is it a different document? But thanks very much for the explanation.
The file name, yes.
I understood.
Right. Are we okay now? Okay, fine. So we're getting down now to the nitty-gritty. We're getting to work, right? Everybody has a copy?
Yes, Chair, we do.
Michaela, you have more copies? Yes.
I don't, but I will follow as closely and as
You
carefully
don't,
as possible.
you can't access the file, Denise?
No.
All right, but I know you'll follow carefully.
Yes, definitely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Good. So we're all set? Very good. So Yannick, you're in charge right now. All right?
Very well, Chair. Good morning, everyone. What we have before us this morning is that we have a compilation.
You're going to have to speak up.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
out.
We have a compilation of recommendations from Jamaican Civil.
Could you state your name, please, for the record?
For the record, my name is...
And your position?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. For the record, my name is Yannick Hall. I am the Senior Assistant Attorney General. I'm acting in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport. So what we have today is that we have a compilation from civil society groups. A government body has also sent a recommendation, and individuals, unsolicited recommendations were also sent for the 2026 review. So this is, the submitting organizations are We Change Jamaica, and I'm Glad I'm a Girl Foundation, Jamaica AIDS Support for Life, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, in particular the Rent Assessment Board, TAMA, which TAMAH, Research Consortium with We Change, Surreptimist International, Jamaicans for Justice, Miss Monica Distant, Equality for All, Jamaica Lands, the Jamaica Council of Churches. So we have taken out the major cross-cutting themes that we have found, and what we have is most submissions have called for an expansion of the definition sections. They would like a broader, more modern definition of the Domestic Violence Act that explicitly covers physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, economical, and financial abuse. They have also pointed out that they would like a definition on coercive controls, which is patterns of behavior without needing physical violence. They have also pointed out that they would also like a definition on technology facilitated or digital abuse, which would entail cyber stalking, online harassment, and surveillance. Non-consensual image. A moment, please. So I am Chair, for your benefit, I apologize. We have summarized the document, so I'm giving an overview of what the document is. Yes, I beg your pardon, Ms. Cohen?
For in committee, Ms. Hall, Council, in committee, for the record, you have to read the content of the matrix into the record after you have done this overview.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Chair. I intend
Good.
to. I was just bringing a meeting of the minds for us to understand whilst we go through.
Okay,
so
no
I
problem.
intend to read it into the record. Yes. So, as I had indicated, they have called for technology facilitated or digital abuse definition, which should include cyber stalking, online harassment, surveillance, non-consensual image sharing, and deepfakes. They have also asked for the concept of domestic relationship and related terms such as visiting relationship or household membership expanded to include non-marital, marital, same-sex, non-cohabiting intimate partners, dating, romantic, and sexual relationships, family members and relatives, shared households, including non-traditional arrangements such as joint tenants with no blood or marriage link, friends or relatives who are cohabiting, and institutional settings like university residences. They have also called for a gender-neutral language to be used throughout the Act. They also asked for a clear recognition that a child is any person under the age of 18 and that exposure to domestic violence constitutes harm. There has also been a strong consensus across the board. What we have found with each recommendation is that they have asked for an introduction or strengthening of emergency protection orders that can be issued by police or justices of the peace with 24 hours access. They've also asked for an expanding protection orders to cover digital abuse and to allow digital no contact or content removal orders. There has been a call for clear timelines for hearings and immediate police-assisted or electronic service of orders, stronger, clearer police duties, victim assistance, medical referrals, safety planning, rights information, and mandatory responses from the JCF. Treating breaches more seriously, that has been a call. They have asked for the removal of discretionary factors such as time elapsed since the breach. They want an escalation of penalties for repeat offenders. They have asked for the additional powers to be granted for monetary compensation, loss of earnings, medical costs, relocation, and legal fees. They have also asked for weapons and firearms surrender and license restrictions. There has been several recommendations for occupation orders and housing to be looked at, and prevention support services and institutional responsibilities. There has been some call for broader systematic reforms, unified family court, and the repeal of marital rape. There has been some minor emphasis on the safeguards for respondents, alternative housing support, fairness in ex parte processes, and the consideration of shared living or institutional environments. So that is an overview. We can go through the document now, which we will start with We Change Jamaica and I'm a Girl Foundation. And I'm glad I'm a Girl Foundation. Everybody has that? All right. So the first recommendation, it is suggested to introduce a new provision under Part 3 to introduce a statutory duty of care for institutions. The legislation should therefore mandate institutions to implement preventative measures, establish clear reporting and response protocols, and provide support services for affected individuals. The second point is the domestic violence legislation should include universities, workplaces, and residential institutions. There has been another recommendation, part 2, that says it is being proposed to create a new provision under part 3 of the Act. The domestic violence should legislate the following: public education, school-based interventions, data collection systems. Recommendation 3, it is being proposed to create a new provision under Part 3 of the Act, which is the Domestic Violence Act, should include a 24-hour hotline, shelters, legal aid, counseling.
Go ahead, SG.
Marlene Aldred, Solicitor General. I'm just going to suggest going forward that I think it's easier if we do each recommendation one by one rather than read all of them out, because persons may have comments on each. Just to say to the committee.
I'm not sure if anyone else is not hearing, but I'm not hearing.
We're not here. I'm
Not
not hearing.
hearing,
Not
member.
hearing at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Hello? Am I being heard now? No, not online.
We're not hearing anything.
Say online.
Are you hearing me? You're not hearing the chair? Okay, we're gonna have it checked. Okay. Members online? All right. Members?
Yeah, just to say that I got from member Scott Motley that they're not hearing anything at all online. They're not hearing anything from us online. Yeah. We're checking it, yes.
We are seeing everyone clearly. We're just not hearing anything.
So you're hearing us now?
Colleagues, I indicated it to Member Brownberg, and she has responded to me. They are now aware of it and they're working it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members? Can you hear me? Members online? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, so
Hearing you, Chair.
we're
Yes,
back on
sir.
track.
Yes, sure.
Excellent. Did you hear Ms. Hall's presentation?
A
In
portion
part.
of it. Yes.
A portion of it.
So, Ms. Hall, what we can do, we go to the matrix and you just start. SG actually was making a point, and we could just do that. We just do it recommendation by recommendation. All right?
Oh, I was just going to ask whether or not we would be getting the overview, a copy of the overview.
Yes, we will make available a copy of the
thank
overview.
you.
Yes. All right. Okay, so Ms. Hall, you're now going through the matrix.
Yes, Chair.
Recommendation by recommendation, as suggested by the SG. Okay,
Sure.
please go ahead.
Yes. The first submission came from We Change Jamaica, and I'm a girl, and I'm glad I'm a girl foundation. The first recommendation is, it is suggested that an introduction of a new provision under Part 3 to introduce a statutory duty of care for institutions. The legislation should therefore mandate institutions to implement preventative measures, establish clear reporting and response protocols, and provide support services for affected individuals. The domestic violence legislation should include universities, workplaces, residential institutions. That's the very first recommendation from this.
Okay, members, your comments on recommendation 1 from We Change, and I'm glad I'm a girl.
Chairman, sorry, again it went
yes,
out.
SG.
Can I just ask for a repeat of the recommendation? So sorry, I wasn't hearing it. I think the internet is just giving trouble.
Could you repeat, Yannick, please? Member Ford, do you have the matrix? You have access to it?
Yes, this is a 2026 matrix.
Yes, and we are looking at general recommendations, and we have started with We Change Jamaica, and I'm glad I'm a girl foundation.
Okay.
And we are discussing recommendation 1.
Just a minute.
And so we're at the point where I'm asking members for their comments on this recommendation. We're going to take it recommendation by recommendation. So if you could, the Solicitor General wanted to make a comment, and then I will take your comment, Member Ford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a note to the members, if they are minded to accept this recommendation, it needs clarification because I don't know what you mean by institutions. So you would need to understand who you want this to apply to because it is not clear. And also, as another note, this is something that could perhaps be addressed in regulation. So if you are again minded to accept this recommendation, you would need to figure out who it's to apply to, and then you could also consider making it a part of your regulations that you make under the Act. Because you would need to have quite a bit of detail when you're talking about having reporting mechanisms, protocols, and so on. Those are the kind of details you don't usually include in an act, but you would include in regulations. as well as you could perhaps even consider having codes of conduct if you have decided which institutions or entities you want this to apply to. So I'm just trying to give you a framework of how, if you're minded to accept it, how you could then fit it in law. Thank you.
Thank you, SG. Member Johnson-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies to you and to everyone present for my lateness this morning. No disregard intended, just a bit of a difficult morning. I believe on a surface reading, we can accept in principle the intent behind the recommendation as a positive one, and I take the SG's guidance on the use of regulations as well, but also the need to clarify. Because I think it's clear that there would be a difference between the duties to be imposed as between the institutions to which reference is made. So they're speaking of a statutory duty of care, but it speaks about a mandate to 1, implement preventative measures, 2, establish clear reporting and response protocols, and 3, providing support services for affected individuals. That's 3 levels of, and 3 types and categories of service and support. And every institution clearly couldn't be expected to provide that. So I'm not sure if the intent would be for us to determine what kind of institutions should be providing any of these. A duty of care, having a duty of care is one thing, and if we think about childcare and protection, so you identify, okay, so a school must report if they are aware or have reason to suspect abuse is taking place. That's a particular standard of responsibility. That would mean that they're likely to require a reporting mechanism. And that, of course, would be something that you would have to put in regs, but the duty would be in the legislation. But then the provision of support services for affected individuals is an entirely different ballgame. And clearly, all institutions would not be expected to do that because that would be an undue burden, and you're unlikely to be able to maintain quality of service. You wouldn't be able to train counselors to be present to provide domestic violence counseling for everyone. You know, does this extend to work? When it says universities, workplace, and residential institutions, would every workplace have to have a counselor? That's an unlikely standard to be maintained. But to say, should you have a reporting mechanism if does a private sector, a normal company, is it a reasonable corporate responsibility that if you suspect someone is a victim of abuse, that you have a reporting mechanism within a private company that has nothing to do with people's personal lives? Is that the level of it? Is that the extent to which you anticipate the law going beyond? I think it will take some thought. It will take some thought. And so while accepting the principle of a duty of care and a duty to report, we will have to be quite careful and thoughtful about the types of institutions that are being asked to have this duty. I think taking guidance from the childcare and protection approach should help us in coming to a decision on this, but I think the breadth of what is here would have to be circumscribed. I don't think this proposal could be accepted in total, but the principle behind it of ensuring that there's a whole of society approach to saying, you can't just leave it to the immediately affected parties, that there should be a mechanism where abuse is suspected, but is that more likely to be a doctor, an HR specialist if you are speaking to companies, within the medical fraternity, within human resources in private or public sector, or would you be looking beyond that in an educational institution? Where would that responsibility lie? You would need to think that through. if we are to take this duty of care on, on whom does that responsibility lie, and then to segment between the three types that are proposed here. So it will take a little bit of thought. As simply as we see it, I think it will take a little bit of thought. Thank you. Even as we welcome the recommendation, of course.
Thank you, Member. I think that your comments, well, in keeping with the SGs, could look at regulations or code of conduct, and maybe this recommendation, they are leaving it to us to determine the institution. And then we could look at, depending on the institution, if we accept their recommendation, it could be in the regulations or there could be a code of conduct. But this is something that we definitely will have to. Yes, right. Member Brownborough?
So I want to agree that I think we all agree in principle on it. I am mindful of the SG's recommendation, but I certainly would like to see what of it can actually be in the legislation, even if some of the details aren't, and the details are worked out in the regulations. So I'd like to see how possible that is.
Thank you. I recognize Member Scott Motley.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith had said and with my colleague Brownberg. I just want to remind us that part of what we are facing culturally is that people are hesitant to get involved in what they see as man and woman business. And so I think that a statutory duty of care could assist us in ensuring that responsibility is placed on persons or companies, whoever it is, so that we have a whole of society understanding and appreciation of the issues which confront us. But I do agree that it has to be very carefully thought out. We do not want it to be unattainable. We do not want it to be cumbersome. And we don't want to place responsibility where it cannot be fulfilled. But I do think it is worthy of the committee setting aside some time to see how it can be approached. Yesterday, I met with the Colombian ambassador, and I was struck by the discussion we had around legislation, and domestic violence was very high, had been very high on the agenda of the administration. And part of what she said assisted was that a neighbor could talk, a neighbor could report, anybody could report any observation of domestic violence. And that really made a difference, because sometimes it places so much of a burden on the actual person, the actual victim, and the family. So I would appreciate some discussion around it, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Scott Motley. I see Member Daly's hand up.
Thank you very much, Chairman. While we will not include everything in the legislation for now, I strongly recommend that we look at some of those other agencies who have responsibility in respect to care and protection, that we include them on this committee in order that whatever recommendations come and it is not fitting into what we are discussing now, they will be able to take it on board, or we will be able to send it to them. I do not know if it's too much work, but Madam Chair, I am quite aware, especially in terms of I am glad I'm a girl, in terms of the mandate for some of these institutions, because you might not understand sometimes what is happening in there, and there's no mechanism, a proper mechanism to monitor, and supervise. And therefore, in our deliberations, we should be able to take all the recommendations because they must came out of some concerns and reporting and make sure that they are put in the area where they ought to be because it will help us holistically how we manage this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this recommendation? Mrs. Johnson Smith, go ahead. Oh, another hand is up. Okay, Member Malahoo Ford, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Though the recommendation is clearly well-intentioned, I do share the view that it requires greater interrogation. Imposing a statutory duty of care on institutions. What does that mean? Which institutions? And who in the institution would take responsibility? If no single piece of legislation can be all things to all men. And while we agree that the problem is pervasive, it is big, and it requires careful attention, are we expanding the concept of domestic violence so broad that the focus will be on any form of violence in any place? The recommendation for clear reporting and response protocol is a good recommendation. I share the view that this is not one for the primary legislation, but can be done in regulations or even codes of conduct. Provision of support.
Can you hear me? Members online? Members, can you hear me?
What it is, on whom should this duty of care, and care to do what? Because it's not immediately clear to me what is being asked for to translate into a statutory provision that can be properly implemented. Those are my preliminary comments.
Agree.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Member Ford. Are you hearing me online okay?
We are, Chair. Yes, ma'am, sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Anyone would wish to make comments on this? Minister Johnson Smith?
So that we can sort of try to bring the points to some clarity at each stage. And I'm thinking these are three legacy hands up, or two legacy hands up, but one I see Senator Bennett Cooper up. Okay. All right. I just wanted to suggest that it seems that we're agreed in principle, if I understand clearly, that there should be a statutory duty if it is that we are to broaden the societal responsibility in order to ensure that we change the culture around the destructive nature of domestic violence and the broader responsibility that society should take in order to increase reporting and increase vigilance, a sense of broader responsibility. So that if we're agreed that a statutory duty is important and that should be in the Act, it still means that we have to give some thought to the scope of the responsibility, and we still will need to define the institutions on whom that responsibility is placed. So yes, so it does seem that there's a bit more, and it also means that we would have to take care to ensure that there is counterbalancing provision which, because you know, it always comes up when you discuss reporting of any kind of abuse, you always hear about, you know, mischief makers. We have people who really have ill intent and who use the ability to report to harm and weaponize it for any purpose. So it is critical to ensure that if you are putting a duty to report, that you also have a balance on the protection that from persons who report for malicious intent. So I'm just saying we need almost 3 streams of thought. One, we need to define the scope of the duty. We need to define, secondly, we need to define the institutions or the bodies within the institutions on which this duty will be placed. And then within that, we also need to parse out the balancing, how you prevent a wider duty from being abused and also from people being held to a duty which they cannot discharge. So just noting for the minute that we identify these actions, bearing in mind that the committee does seem to broadly believe that there should be a duty. I think Member Malahoo Fort maybe didn't agree that there should be a duty because she wants to understand the duty more. But based on the other speakers as well, there seemed to be a broader thinking that there is a need for a framework that widens responsibility beyond quote-unquote man and woman business.
Thank you, Member Johnson Smith. I recognize Senator Bennett Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with most of what has been said. I do have a concern, and the concern lies when we consider what would be the scope of the duty. And when you think of some real life possible examples, I think, for example, of residential institutions. And I do note that when during the course of this discussion, the discussion did not center only on institutions, but individuals. And but the institutions would exist as a statutory or as an entity, but the institution, all institutions are people, by people, governed by people, who, as I think it was Member Fort asked, referred to the individuals in the institution who would have this duty to report, because the recommendation here focuses on clear reporting and response. So if, for example, in a landlord-tenant situation at a university, for example, there is a failure to respond or there is no reporting, to what extent do we legislate that framework of the responsibility to know? You know, you may not be aware, so, or do we, how do we frame that so that we look at circumstances where you ought to have been aware, and even if you were aware, if you fail to respond or you do not respond in a certain way, you do not respond timely, it then takes me to what then? As a neighbor, I am going to be subject, or as part of an institution, I have a job somewhere and I do not respond timely, I'm going to be subject to penalties, because if we're imposing a duty and there is a failure to act within the scope of that duty, something follows. And the level to which I am now going to be exposed to punishment, penalties, because I, for different reasons, may not have wanted to report, or I may consider it interference. I may be afraid that I'm exposed to similar harm. There are certain elements of this that we have to be very careful when we impose statutory duties, where individuals are then become subject to penalties and to become exposed in ways that we may not wish to create that kind of framework.
Thank you so much. I will recognize Mrs. Aldred at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out one other detail that would need to be considered is, to whom is a report to be given? We say a report is to be made. To whom? Is it the police? Is it to, you would have to also try to decide on that. I'm going to suggest, although I know Jamaica does a number of things and we build out novel areas, but perhaps there could be some research that's done in other jurisdictions to see if any other country has this kind of obligation in their law. It may assist.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister Johnson Smith, you wanted to make a comment?
Madam Chair.
Sure. Just before you come in, Member Malahoo Fort, in response to the SG's point, I just wanted to say perhaps we could just ask I'm Glad I'm a Girl Foundation whether their recommendation was based on any international practice, because the committee would be happy to receive that to consider the matter further. So we could just do that as an action, even as we take it as a technical work in progress. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Go ahead, Member Ford.
Just wanted to clarify, Madam Chair, based on everything said, that at this stage, my recommendation to the committee would be to reserve on this proposal by I'm a Girl Foundation, because it does require greater clarity. And I share the view expressed by Senator Bennett Cooper that imposing a statutory duty of care requires caution and clarity about the scope of the care, on whom it is intended to be placed, among other things. I also share the view that we could look to see what has been done in other jurisdictions, but the form of the recommendation right now lacks sufficient clarity to translate into a legislative provision. So I would reserve on it at this time.
All right, thank you. I think that Member Ford, you could take your hand down so that, right. So I think we have sufficiently aired our position on this recommendation, and it is a matter where we will reach out to We Change, get further information from them, and come back at another time to discuss. Yeah.
And we're also adding the recommendation about us also doing the research. I don't think we need to leave it to We Change or I'm Glad I'm a Girl. I think since we agree in principle, we could see what other jurisdictions have done, what they've kept in the Principal Act and what they've placed in regulations.
Yes, so this will be captured in, this will be captured in the notes, and we will follow through on that. So we now will move on to recommendation 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recommendation 2 from We Change. It is being proposed to create a new provision under Part 3 of the Act. The domestic violence legislation should legislate the following: public education, school-based interventions, and a data collection system.
I invite comments. To create a new provision under Part 3 of the Act, and that DV should legislate the following: public education, school-based interventions, and data collection systems. I invite members to comment. Or if anyone from the technical team would wish to make a comment here.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Madam
please
Chair.
Go ahead.
So public education requires sustained activity. I don't think there is any doubt that for every bit of legislation or every issue that we're grappling with, sustained public education would be useful. So as long as we are clear about the commitment to ongoing public education. The school-based intervention, I'm not so sure what that means, if it is about a curriculum to sensitize students around the domestic violence issues, around provisions of the law. If it relates to something like that, it will always be helpful. Data collection systems, again, data is important for every bit of work that we do. On whom would the duty be placed to collect the data? Is it separate and apart from what is being collected now, and by whom? So if we get a sense of what, for example, the Gender Bureau of Affairs currently collect, is it asking for more than that? Is it placing a duty? On whom with the duty to collect the data collection system? Again, it requires a little bit of interrogation, but as a general rule, public education is something that we must always strive for and commit to do in a sustained way. School intervention in schools, the school level is an appropriate place to sensitize young minds about what is happening, what to look for, also to let them know what the provisions of the laws are. And data collection, yes, but without some specificity. Again, how do we translate the recommendation into a legislative provision that will be enforced, that will be implemented, and that at the end of the day, we will benefit from, separate and apart from what we're doing now. If what exists is inadequate, what is the level of inadequacy? Is it that we have the provisions, whether at the policy level or legislative level, they're not being funded, they're not being sustained? Those are the issues that come to mind immediately around this recommendation. Though I note it is asking that a new provision be inserted in the law mandating for these things.
Thank you, Member Ford. I recognize Denise Daly, Member Denise Daly, and after her, I will take comments from Member Brownberg.
I want to support We Change public education. I spoke to that before, and we look at the curriculum, especially in school, because I can tell you they are the ones who sometimes educate the family how and what to expect and how to behave. Once they know the law, they will be able to impart it more than even us in government to the homes if they know. But I want to just remind all of us that our culture and practices before in this country is about some of these things that we want to legislate on was the norm. And therefore, I am in total agreement with public education, because there are a number of things that is going to become a criminal offense now, or something for you to counsel for. It is something that people used to believe it is the norm based on our culture and our practices. So I strongly believe, Chairman, that I want to go with We Change with the two recommendations that are given.
Thank you, Member Daly. I now ask Member Brownberg make her comments.
Sure. By now, Minister, you know, Chair, you know that I am going to support the public education, and in fact, an inclusion specifically in the law for public education. I believe it would be important. We know that it is going to cost. And often it is that annual budget that's missing, or that budget that is missing, that prevents it. But I do believe that it is important enough, whether it is through the ministry, through the Gender Affairs Bureau, for there to be a mandate for public education. including partners, as you have been doing before, with civil society and others. I believe that given the level of underreporting that exists, I think it's about 63% who do not report for fear, because of fear, whether it is around stigma or exclusion or just not wanting persons to know, whatever it is. So I believe that that is extremely important. School, in terms of the school-based intervention, I believe that it is important to have age-appropriate public education, and through schools and communities and clinics, those are places through which those that can be done. I think it is also important around the data collection systems. We already have, whether it is JCF, the courts, and all of that, but I think the data collection is important. It is important for us to be able to design policies and programs to deal with what is happening. And if we are not actually collecting the data and even mandating periodic review of that data, that we don't get to tweak and to make laws that actually respond to what is really happening, and not just what we hear, not just that kind of thing. But I think it needs to be driven by data. So yes, I said annual reporting by whether it is JCF, the Ministry of Gender, the courts. Quite frankly, I would go as far as to say we need to have these reports to Parliament in terms of the number of protection orders that are granted, what is happening in terms of breaches, prosecutions. We have too high an incident of femicide for us to be shy about making this mandatory.
Thank you, Member Brownberg. I recognize Senator Bennett Cooper. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The thoughts that occurred to me and my comments, I'm hoping that Soljan could perhaps give me some guidance. Part of my concern, colleagues, is that I think it is unwise for us to legislate certain types of behavior where we cannot impose actionable sanctions. I am not sure, I've never been clear why we would, when we think of including in legislation issues such as public education, if there's a failure to do so, what then? And if there are no actionable sanctions that can follow certain things, why is it a matter of law instead of policy or otherwise? And so I have that thought when I think of public education broadly. Also, when I think of school-based interventions, these firstly interventions, I think that would be something that clearly we would have to define, because there are all kinds of interventions that, that exist that we would have to look at. But if there is a failure on the part of the school or individuals in the school to engage in these interventions, we're looking at sanctions. I mean, what follows if you're not following law? And if it's against the school, is it against individuals who have certain roles in the schools? And I'm similarly not clear. The data collection systems, yes. All of this, the recommendations contained, or everything contained in recommendation 2, I find important and useful, but as a matter of law, it's being placed in legislation where there is a failure to do what sanctions flow, and would those be reasonable or actionable sanctions? But I'd be happy to be guided on these. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Bennett Cooper. No, your comments noted. I invite Mrs. Aldred to make her comments and to give us guidance here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure if this is guidance, but it is true that there are times when laws put aspirations where laws have aspirations with no sanctions. And sometimes those are done for very specific reasons. As it relates to public education campaigns, we generally don't put that in law, but I know it is in the tobacco control bill. And that's because we have an international obligation. So there are times when we put some of these types of matters in, especially like a public education campaign, without a sanction, but because we need to insert it in our legislation, which will help to ensure, hopefully, that the government will fulfill its international obligations. Now, when it's put in, it's usually a responsibility for a particular entity, and it's usually a government entity, usually a ministry, which is the case, from what I recall, in that tobacco control bill, where it would be the responsibility of the relevant ministry. So we don't just put in, we wouldn't put it in like this. And again, I'm not sure if this would really need to be in law if we are not implementing an international obligation. But I know from time to time, some ministries will say, if it's in the law, it will help them to be able to use this as a way to get funding. So every ministry has to approach first the Ministry of Finance and then Parliament for budgetary allocations. If you have this type of requirement there, it helps to justify your request for the budget. And I know some ministries have raised that as a reason to include it in legislation, where again you would not necessarily have, so you wouldn't have a sanction, well, a penalty in the sense that it's not criminal, but what you are creating is a statutory duty. So it is a statutory duty and an obligation that you would be placing. Usually this is placed on a government entity, usually a ministry. As it relates to data collection, we do have a number of laws that also require collection of data. So, for instance, the DNA Evidence Act mandates that the name of the entity is slipping me now, that has the database, that they are also supposed to ensure that they have statistics, they have data collected, and that's not the only law that has that. But again, it's usually because you intend to use that data or those statistics that are collected for other reasons. And sometimes you may be aware that others may want to reach out to you for those statistics. So we don't just put it in just because it sounds nice, but you really are supposed to have an aim, an objective of putting something in law. And sometimes, as I said, these may not have criminal sanctions, but when you put it in, you are creating a statutory duty.
Thank you, SG. I recognize Member Ford. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we think about what is to go in the new law, I think we have to pay close attention to what we can enforce and what we can implement. Jamaica is not short of statutes, and however, there is a huge gap between the enforcement and implementation of the law. Based on what everyone has said, I think it's recognized that public education is critical. Having data, verifiable data, properly disaggregated data to inform decisions is important. In our jurisdiction, once data is collected, it has to be protected under the Data Protection Act, and there is a whole system in place. I'm not at this stage inclined to say these matters ought to be legislated, though I believe they are important. I think we perhaps should look at where data is being collected now that helps to inform us about the size of the problem that we're dealing with in domestic violence, how the data is disaggregated, what we're doing with it, whether it is sufficient or we need some streamlining around that. The school-based intervention, does it require curriculum? Does it require, what else does it require? At this stage, as well-intentioned as I find the suggestion and as important as the areas are, I wouldn't recommend that we consider it for new provisions in the law without more.
Thank you, Member Ford. Member Brownberg?
I really just asked for the intervention because I wanted to clarify something that I said. It is 83% of women, of persons who really don't report intimate partner violence. 63% of them cite fear as a reason why they don't. But I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why I am totally for ensuring that public education is in the law. I personally am tired of coming to Parliament to talk about how sad we are about a case that is in the news, whether it actually ends up as a death or it is some really very horrific act. And I do therefore believe that for the number of times that I have sat in Parliament from 2012 to now, whether it is in the upper or lower house, and I have had to come and express that kind of sentiment, I am asking for us to ensure that we do have that in the act at the end of the day. And that is the reason why I have linked it also to post-implementation monitoring of the law. That not just do we ask for it, but that we do something also with the data that is collected that helps us to kind of monitor, change, review some of the actions that we take as government, as civil society, and as other, and so I want it to be very clear on the record that I am strongly supporting what they have proposed. And I'm not suggesting that you just pick it up and implement it as is, but that we look at how responsibly we put it in the law, and also what else is required to make it work and to make it meaningful.
Thank you, Member Brownberg. You know, I'm just saying we need to think very carefully because we put it in the law. The agencies that are involved that would see to implementation are subject to ceilings from the Ministry of Finance, and you know, they're not in total control. So who would be sanctioned? So
thanks very much. The other point that I didn't say and I really want to make, the SG made a point about how important our international commitments have been. And on this matter, I would like to make sure our national commitments are equal to those international commitments that force us to put it in law, such that, Minister, you are helped by this law that we have, so that you don't have to beg and plead at cabinet. You know, this can be taken just as importantly as any other international commitment that we have to get the support for something like public education and the collaboration that you would need to have with civil society and others to get it done.
Okay, I will now recognize Council Yannick Hall, and then online, and I will recognize Member Ford after Council Hall. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that there should be a distinction between statutory duties and operational service deliveries. Now, what has been happening from the BGA standpoint is that a lot of these things are already being done, right, Mrs. Robinson? There is a robust public education campaign. Now, the ministry will commit to ensuring that sensitizations and public education is also done. This will be maybe a brand new act or an amendment. So of course, we would have to reach across Jamaica to ensure that each person is sensitized as to what is in that act. As Member Daly had indicated that a lot of persons are doing it and do not know that it is wrong. So I just wanted to raise the distinction that placing a statutory duty, whilst it can be operationalized by the line ministry, which is our ministry.
All right, go ahead, Member Ford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. By way of clarification and amplification, I think we all agree that public education is important. And every time we are met with the commission of a horrible crime, there is outrage. And in those moments, I think there is usually little or no disagreement about the action steps that need to be taken. I'm just wondering, on whom should the responsibility be placed for this public education? Just want to hear a little bit more from Member Brown-Burke, what her thinking is. And again, it perhaps would be helpful to hear, Madam Chair, from your own ministry through the initiatives that have been undertaken, where the gaps are. So there are some issues that may require specific action by the line ministry with responsibility for a piece of legislation. There are other matters that require a at-large societal response. But for every action that we mandate, it's always helpful to also identify who the actor should be. I mean, if something is to be done, who is to do it? And what exactly is to be done, and what happens when there is failure to do it? So, because we know public education is critical, not only for domestic violence law. In fact, every piece of legislation that is passed by the Parliament should be accompanied by a period of public education and orientation, and steps had been taken in the past to ensure that we make progress in this regard. And we have seen it done for numerous pieces of new legislation. But the public education is ongoing and never ending. So just wanted to hear a little more from Senator Member Brown-Burke about her thinking, because there are so many things that we have done legislatively that we have not followed through. And when you place statutory responsibilities on institutions and individuals, and those are honored in breach instead of observance, what we do over time is to delegitimize our institutions, and people believe, sure, laws are passed and we can't implement them. So for me, even while something is very important, putting them in law requires a lot more care and caution if we're going to go forward in a new and different way. Because again, our statute books full of things to be done that only exist on paper for the most part. So just kind of want to hear a little more, because no one listening should go away with the impression that any of us is of the view that public education is not critical to ensuring that our people understand their rights and their responsibilities, and we know how to navigate. It is true that there are many victims who are afraid, but the fear is not because a legal provision is absent or present. there are cultural issues, their own sense of agency and empowerment. So we want to make sure for this critical area of domestic violence that we are addressing the right issue with the right tool.
Thank you, Member Ford. Dr. Brownberg?
I'm pleased. I was starting to say that I'm pleased to hear Member Malahoo Ford say that she thinks that we're all agreed. But it is true. I think we are all agreed on the importance of public education. I am at a point where I am no longer impressed when we put in our legislation those things that are only our international commitments. I believe that there need to be some commitments that we make as a nation that are also legislated, and this is one of them for me, and I feel very strongly about it. I feel very strongly every time I look at where we fall in terms of rates of femicide, and I feel very strongly about it every time I'm in a conversation in my communities about that. So yes, I believe that part of the public education responsibility rests squarely in the Ministry of Gender. There's no doubt about it, and I said that. I do agree that the Gender Affairs Bureau, they are doing quite a number of activities that emanate from, that are directed by policy, which is a policy that we want to have. But I really want to move it from just simply the grace and kindness and enlightenment of who runs the Gender Affairs Bureau or who the minister is, but that it is a national commitment that we are making. And that's kind of how I see it. In the same way we have these special units at throughout the JCF, for example. That's one point that we would have the public education. Some of what the Gender Affairs Bureau is doing is also what we're talking about. But I'm saying let's mandate it, because Jamaica is at a point where we can not afford to leave it simply to policy of our government so minded. We all need to take it seriously enough to understand that it is if we are to be honest, it is a national crisis that we are facing, and therefore it requires that bold step and movement in terms of that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that with all of what we're balancing at Cabinet, in terms of priorities, this must fall there. Because if we are also going to be honest, if we are able to get the kind of support where public education begins to change behavior, the benefit is just going to be too great for us not to take that chance. And honestly, we're just kind of tired of our international commitments leading the way. This is a national commitment that we need to make.
Thank you, Dr. Brownberg. I will now recognize Senator Bennett Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Don't want to repeat myself too deeply, and sometimes, but I just want to make sure that it is clear as a matter of record that there are some persons who are exhausted at heading to court, looking at the laws on our books, and they are just there as words. And we should be cautioned against making legislation that the primary word that can be used to describe certain provisions is aspirational. Because if there is no motivation to act on those aspirational provisions, there will be no action. public education, and I believe in using perhaps far more sophisticated language. Member Ford made it clear it is ongoing, it continues, it happens. Cultural change and attempts to make alterations in certain types of negative behaviors is continuous, it is ongoing. And there are many Jamaicans who are utterly exhausted with some of the negative things that continue to happen in this country, continue to be visited on women and children and some of our men too in this country, and we want the change to occur. We also want to ensure that legislation, when we make it, is actionable, that what we put in our laws are not just placed there because it looks good, that they are placed there because they can result in action. And there are times when we have to seriously consider whether, if there are no actionable sanctions included in legislation, what's the point of legislating on those specific issues? If you cannot take enforcement action in certain circumstances, I have encountered in my time as an attorney so many things in our laws, on our books, that is really just a waste of words. So we need to be sure that we make useful legislation that will actually result in benefit to the people of Jamaica. Having said that, public education continues to be one of the most important things that we need to do in this country, because there are too many things that sometimes we know it in an intellectual way, but we do not understand it. And continuous conversations and explanations must take place. But they must take place in a manner that makes sense. And we must make laws that make sense and that can actually result in real impact and change for the Jamaican people.
Thank you, member. I will now invite member Johnson Smith to make her comments.
Thank you, Chair. I think the points very clearly made by Senator Bennett Cooper right now, just now, resonate well with me. But I had intended to earlier make my intervention after Council had spoken, because I think one of the things that we may need to try to do in this process is to be clear on what needs to be perhaps improved in terms of implementation under the Strategic Action Plan, which exists, the 2017-2027. Meaning, what are the identifiable actions? Because right now, public education is a responsibility of the Bureau of Gender Affairs as the sort of head coordinating body responsible for messaging, etc., while JCF is a partner, Ministry of Health is a partner. I know they're identified partners. I'm having a moment where I'm not able to list. There are several partners in education and public education, and we undoubtedly will always need more. There needs more. There need perhaps more support for the type of public education that exists and where it exists. We know that the JCF has expanded their number of domestic violence centers within hotspot police stations identified by data based on where the largest incidents of domestic violence occur. And I know there's a commitment among the leadership of the JCF to expand these in collaboration with the BGA, et cetera, that helps to provide some of the data. And the number of reports that have come into these domestic violence centers demonstrates the fact that there is an increased understanding. Is it where we need to be? Absolutely not. And the 83% figure that, that Member Brownberg quoted earlier is indicative that there's a high number of women, yes, and men, but mostly women. We recognize this where we are as a society, is that domestic violence is visited more largely on women than on men, even though we will continue to take a gender-neutral approach. The reality of what occurs has to be recognized with a level of gender sensitivity, or we will not target the problems appropriately. So I wanted to say, so there's a clarity that we need in terms of what needs to be enhanced operationally in terms of the strategic action plan, which will soon need to be renewed or extended and expanded, improved, etc., and what needs to be in legislation targeted at fighting domestic violence. The tools that are necessary for effective cases to be brought, to be prosecuted, and for appropriate penalties and sanctions to be imposed that allow for a correct and the most modern and appropriate fit-for-purpose definition that allows it to be addressed appropriately by the courts and that allows public education to be effectively guided. But does every step that needs to be taken need to be put in the law for its effectiveness? Absolutely not. It's actually what will not only make this Joint Select Committee's work an industry of itself that will actually delay the promulgation of legislation unduly and perhaps unnecessarily, but it will contribute to the lack of confidence in the legislative process if we hear about the exhaustion and the frustration of persons who look at words on the paper that cannot be enforced. So if we are focused on what it is this law, the modernization of this domestic violence law is intended to do, while acknowledging and relying on the technical personnel present to identify for us where things are in the strategic action plan, but require legislative support for their implementation, or simply require additional funding and resourcing for their implementation, as opposed to new words on the paper that will not take us any further. So there's the strategic action plan, and there is the law. The Joint Select Committee clearly has a responsibility to understand this issue holistically, but it needs to understand it holistically for the purpose of ensuring that what we're doing in the law results in better protection for victims of domestic violence, better focusing of preventative work that's necessary, that needs legislative support as opposed to funding and resourcing, which is a implementation issue. If it is that we need to take on, and although I have responsibility for international obligations, I agree very much with Member Brownberg's position that there are times when, and I do believe we actually have significant agency as a parliament. We implement most things because they are national obligations. So I wouldn't be unduly distracted by this, by a concern that we're only putting things in law where there are international obligations. I think the point that was being made earlier is that some things only are put in laws when they are international obligations because they are not otherwise recognized as legislatively necessary. Not that we don't focus on national or sense of sovereignty and agency when we legislate. So I think if we are looking at, again, back to the specifics of this recommendation, if we're looking at we're clearly all agreed, public education. If we thought we were agreed on statutory duty, we were less so than we are on the same page in respect of public education. It is required. If we state it here, or does a BGA believe that stating public education as a responsibility in the law versus recognizing that it is a part of the strategic action plan, Data collection is a responsibility of statin. Do we need to ensure that the strategic action plan identifies that statin and PIOJ must be providing gender disaggregated data, etc., or does it need to be in the law? I think we need to understand that from you in terms of what is needed. Is it that you need more resources, or is it that it needs to be in the law? I suspect it is the former and not the latter, but I will be guided, and I think that we could all benefit from a better understanding of what the strategic action plan requires of us in respect of legislation, and that will help us not overburden this process with words on paper that cannot be enforced and do not make one woman safer, as opposed to focusing our energies on ensuring that what we have here and what we end up with in this law is modern, fit for purpose, agile, or let me not say agile, responsive to the actual needs that exist, while recognizing that some of the cultural change issues and some of the operational actions that need to be taken, that these lie in resourcing of the plan as opposed to words on the paper. So I say this maybe even more as a sort of perspective on the approach to the Joint Select Committee, because we are on recommendation 2 of 1 of one institution. And I just keep thinking about how long, this process will take if this is our approach. We do need to ensure that we're placing the energy behind the things that will create direct change through the law, and things that should more appropriately just be dealt with by implementing agencies and saying, this needs stronger resourcing, this needs more money, this needs more people, this needs to be in the plan because it's not in the plan, okay, yes, this needs to be in our law. So I think focusing on not ensuring that we try to put everything in because it's a suggestion will maybe get us further faster. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Johnson-Smith. All the presentations have been very convincing. And, I believe that the 3 areas here that have been recommended to be included in the legislation, that these areas, public education, school-based interventions, data collection systems, that they are important, extremely important, and we are, in fact, implementing them. But I'm the first to recognize that we need to move to the next level. We need to move to the next level. However, I'm not sure legislation will guarantee that we move to the next level. This is a matter that we would, of course, speak with our international partners, which we are already engaged in doing in relation to the public education program, which was previously funded in some way through the Spotlight Initiative. This, I understand, is of great concern to all members, not just Member Brown-Burke and Member Daly. And so we have to look at this very, very carefully. But as the minister, as chair, I do not think putting it in the legislation is really going to guarantee what we want to achieve. At this point, I also want to underscore the fact that at this pace at which we are looking at the matrix and the recommendations, we'll be here next year at the pace at which we're going. So I just want to say to members, it's important that we look at the matrix, we make some decisions, and we move on to the next stage. We have from WeChange several other recommendations. It's now almost 1 p.m. I don't know how much longer members are available to be here. And at 2 p.m., I have another Joint Select Committee meeting to chair, which deals with the green paper on the culture and creative sector. So do we want to quickly run through, and those things that we can agree on, we agree on with the rest of the recommendations for we change, so we at least finish one set of recommendations from an entity? Or do we want to stop at 1 o'clock and then the next round we pick up from there? I want to encourage members of the committee to, you have the matrix for you to, outside of meetings, you go through the matrix so that when we have our meetings, we can quickly look at and see where we agree, where we have a common understanding. We can just make the decision and move on to the ones where we may have different opinions and want to have a major discussion. So, do we continue for another half an hour?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. So
until 1, because I'll have to leave at 1, Chairman.
Madam Chair,
but let's say we go on for another half an hour to see how much of the recommendations made by We Change that we can agree on, right? The ones that we still are not, that we're not sure about or that we don't have consensus, we can come back to those after.
If I may,
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I don't have a difficulty doing that. I'm also wondering, though, because we had received from Ms. Hall an overview of all of the submissions, and I think an approach that we could also use is to look at where there are common recommendations and determine how we deal with those to see how many we would get through. I mean, we may not be able to do that now. Many of us would have just been hearing her review. So if we have that, and then we can use that later to do our own review, yes, of her report and what we have as the submissions, I think we might also be able to make significant progress doing it like that as well.
Thank you, Member Brownberg. So I've asked the clerk if she could look at the matrix to see where there is common agreement, consensus. You have a document there that says that? Council, you have already done that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we have is we have pulled the recommendations and compiled them. Are they like a common thread?
No, we didn't do anything.
So yes, I was speaking to Mrs. Robinson to say that what we could do is to compile them like what Dr. Brownberg had indicated for the next session so that it would be easier to go through. So if We Change is saying something in common with JFJ, then we would compile them and then we could go through from there. It would make it easier with your permission, Madam Chair.
Yes, that would be good. So the next meeting, we would look at where we have common recommendations that cut across the various entities, and we could look at that as the main focus for our next meeting. I would like to ask members. Yes, you would be provided with, as you were provided with the matrix.
No, that's not what I meant, Madam Chair. I'm saying, can we, since we want to actually do the work at the next meeting, can we get it early enough so we can do some work ourselves to come prepared. Because otherwise we are going, well, I don't know about anybody else, otherwise we are going to come, sit in front of us, and I'm one of those, I like to go through and look and, you know, before, so we could actually make some decisions because you have sent it early enough. We did get it, but not for me early enough. I mean, I glanced through to be able to do what I'm hoping that we could do next time around.
Member Brown-Burke, we will make every effort to ensure that you get it early. Although the matrix that we're now looking at was sent out in May to members. Yeah. Right? But I appreciate and understand that, you know, members are busy and it's voluminous, so you would not have had a chance to go through it. So I will ask the team to even make it easier for you by breaking it down into where there is common recommendations across entities, and we look at that first, and then we I'm hoping that we want to set our dates, in fact, ahead of time and ask you to pencil in your diary. We're looking at meetings in September, October, and November. And we have some proposed dates because we really want the full membership as much as possible to come out. We have to make decisions and we have a timeline. So in September, we're looking at dates that are now available, and we can choose one or two if we want to meet twice. The 16th of September, 16th, 17th, 23rd, 24th. And 16th, 17th, 23rd, 24th. Right, so later on, just before we adjourn, we can agree on the date. In October, we're looking at the 28th or the 29th. And in November, we want to do a weekend retreat. And we are proposing November 26th to the 29th. So we do Thursday through to Sunday. Well, we really have to break the back of this thing. We have to break the back of this thing. By the end of the fiscal year, we want to have the legislation in place. So we're going to have to aggressively address this matter, right? Yes.
Madam, if I may, you indicated that you perhaps would wish to go on for another half an hour. It's being 12:56. It was my expectation that we would have broken about 1 o'clock. I'm not too sure how far beyond 1 I will be able to sit. So I just thought I should share that with you, Madam Chair. You and with regarding the dates.
Thank you. Well, maybe I should ask the question, how many persons are available to stay beyond 1?
I'm
a
unavailable,
quorum is
Madam
3.
Chair. So sorry. I have another meeting coming up, another appointment.
Uh-huh. So
I'm also unable to change, just to say as well, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
I also have a commitment at 1, Madam Chair. I anticipated that would be when we would have adjourned.
So we have at least 3 persons who will be Minister Johnson Smith and Dr. Brown-Burke. Can you spend another half an hour?
Sorry, Madam Chair, it just was sounding to me like so many members would not be able to continue who have had pretty strong views and perspectives. Maybe since we have identified a course of action that should help to consolidate some of the suggestions, that maybe this would be an appropriate time to adjourn and then we restart with that level of foundational work having been done and a commitment to submit our preferred dates. Maybe?
Okay, are we saying an appropriate time is 1? We are saying that. All right. So let us conclude in relation to the We Change recommendations. We were looking at recommendation 2. We at least need to make a decision, not necessarily a final decision, but is it that we will come back to discussing that matter?
Yes, Madam Chair, but I just was noting that recommendation 3 is again about a hotline, shelters, and legal aid counseling,
Yes.
which are very clearly operational
That's
and not
right.
legislative in nature.
That's
so we
right.
could acknowledge that as another recognition made.
Yes.
So we've actually dealt with 3.
Yes.
That this is an action plan type issue, not even necessarily regulations. It's something that needs to be done outside of.
Yeah. So in fact, recommendation 3. Recommendation 2, we are already implementing public education, school-based interventions, data collection systems. We have to, and I certainly agree that we need to be more generous with our budget expenditure in these areas, and we are committed to working on that. Do we put it in the legislation or not? We can adjourn that discussion. Suspend that discussion and make a decision later on. In relation to the 24-hour hotline, we have it for male and female, working very effectively. The shelters, yesterday I should have received, we had scheduled the handing over of the keys for the 3rd shelter, right? Which will also include a transition house. But I had to reschedule that. We're going to do it after the independence celebrations. So we would have had a shelter in the east, shelter mid-island, and the shelter in the west. And the one in the west is even more expansive. It's something that I know that members here will be very proud of. And we, of course, provide counseling through the Bureau. And we also provide support through legal aid. So these are areas that we're already implementing. If it's sufficient, that is a matter that we have to look at. And legislation is not necessarily going to guarantee. What we have to do is ensure that there's a commitment to expand and to increase funding. And of course, when we meet as the caucus, the bicameral caucus, these are areas that as women parliamentarians, we can see how we can support and provide more reinforcement to the Bureau and to the gender machinery and the gender agenda and architecture, the gender architecture, to give them more support. So, go ahead, Member Burke.
Madam Chair, I just simply want to put it on record that at a later date, I will in fact come back to the committee with greater details about that strong point that I'm making about how we treat public education.
Excellent, thank you. So it's in fact 2 minutes after 1. And so let me just do my closing remarks.
Madam Chair, I'm so sorry. Out of order, I should have raised my hand, but I just want to quickly say that the committee that was discussed earlier that I'm volunteering myself to be placed on it, I believe is a committee that your member Fort would be chairing. The subcommittee, that is. I didn't want to forget before you closed, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you for that. I do have some recommendations here that through the Bureau, through the ministry, we have a list of persons who are available to provide support to the working group, of which Member Malahoo Fort will chair, and we have a list of legislation that would be in need of review or, cross-cutting. Sexual Offences Act, Offences Against the Person Act, Cybercrimes Act, Sexual Harassment Protection and Prevention Act, Child Care and Protection Act, Trafficking in Persons, Prevention, Suppression and Punishment Act, Evidence Act, Family Property Rights of Spouse, Maintenance Act, Children Guardianship and Custody Act, Firearms Act, Constabulary Force Act, Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, Constitution of Jamaica, and Child Pornography Prevention Act. So this is a list that has been compiled by the team from the ministry, and they are available to provide support to the subcommittee that is chaired by Member Malahoo Fort. So I want to take, at this point to thank everyone for coming and to say that we have done some work. We have started the work, and I'm happy that we have started. We have had frank conversations, and I'm sure everybody now recognizes, including our television audience, that this is not glamorous work. This is real work. And it's very time consuming. And I know that our technical team have other legislation and policies and for review. And so I really want to thank them for making themselves available to be here today, led by the Solicitor General. And we look forward to the team being present at the next meeting. So thanks to the legal and technical team, everyone from the ministry who participated. Going forward, I would like the working group to continue its review of the cross-cutting legislation. I will work with the committee coordinator on a proposed schedule for our upcoming meetings, and that will be circulated. I don't know if members are in a position at this time to indicate, based on the dates I've given, to indicate when they would be available or they would need time, and then would indicate to the committee coordinator the dates for which they're available, so we can firm up our meeting schedule early enough and plan our agenda for those meetings. So I just want to thank you all again for your time. I should indicate here, in addition to preparing to take over the keys from the contractor for the third shelter, we have gone into an arrangement with Amber Connect to develop a gender-based violence app. And we are far advanced in relation to the app and how it will help victims or survivors to fight gender-based violence. But we will have that information, more information on the app at a later stage. So I want to thank you all so much. Please go through the matrix that you have. We will send out the ones that are common across various entities for you to look at and give your feedback. And I look forward to the next meeting in September. Have a good Emancipation Independence celebration and a good break for the month of August. Rest well, because you're coming back here to do a lot of work. Thank you.
Same to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you
I
so
move for
much.
the adjournment.
Okay, thank you for moving the motion. Who's second? Dr. Brownberg. So we didn't have to go to any other business. So I now declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
On the side or the back, you fi check out the servings. Just do the maths, not taking too much. Figure build up the facts. So me on the nutrition facts. It there inna the table on the side or the back. Take note of the sodium, the sugars and the fats. 5% or less in the on the right track. You fi zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there inna the table on the side or the back. Vitamins, minerals and vitamin 2, 20% and more that good for